Okay, we're good.
Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. We'll start with the pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to
The flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That is. That's it. All right, we'll open up with public comments. And we've got Paul Sikowski today.
Oh, thank you. Hi, everybody. Good evening. I don't know if everybody knows my background here was in town. Basically, I'm your town treasurer right now, my 4th year. And prior to that, 16 years as selectman. And prior to that, I guess I've been on a half a dozen building committees. And I believe Tim and I are at one time on a charter revision commission. So I really thank all of you for really taking the time for this most important meeting in terms of trying to clarify the town charter. You know, I want to say, I don't want to brag here, but I think I understand the operations of the town on both sides of the so-called coin. I'm here really because Joan Bradley in her due diligence one time gave me a call and she says, "Oh, you sat on the board of selectmen for 16 years," and he says, we have an issue in the Charter Revision Commission about the board of selectmen. And one of the issues is whether or not there should be a 5-man board. Well, let me just say, if I would be sitting on your side of the table there, I would vote against it. Basically, there's a couple of reasons why. One is you essentially take a look at the history of the town. Since the creation of the town, it's been a 3-man board. It's more transparent because when you increase the manpower, it's just less managerial, so-called transparency is the best word to use for it. There's always a difference of opinion. I can tell you, after sitting on the board for 16 years, and 12 of those years, I was the minority selectman. And as minority selectman, I can say that on several occasions, I was able to convince my other selectmen to consider my proposal, whatever we were discussing, and I convinced them to go my way. Minority representation will always be a problem. No matter if you go 3-man board, 5-man board, it's going to be there. But the other issue is that sometimes finding candidates, whether it's a selectman or first selectman, because when you look at the qualifications that you want, let's just stick with selectman. You want somebody with some managerial experience. And you want somebody that understands what takes the operation of the town to be efficient. And you know, it's a demanding job because basically you're meeting at least twice a month and doing budget season meeting many times, and sometimes there's a special meetings, and it's demanding. Plus, there are so-called public meetings that you must attend, you know, just for the appearance of the board of selectmen and the town government. Just creating a large, I want to say, a 7-man board might be, I'm sorry, a 5-man board would create a problem for a PUC because basically you have a 7-man board. Right now in Public Utilities Commission, you have 3 selectmen and 2 so-called commission members who are supposed to be experts in sewer and water. We're fortunate right now you have one individual who is a chemical engineer and the other one is a plumber. But over the period of time, you develop expertise. Having a 7-man board, I can tell you after sitting on the PUC for 16 years, there's a lot of discussions and a lot of times you cannot come to agreement with 5 men. You can imagine with 7. I think it would be worse, frankly. So, you know, that's my issue about a five-man board, it really, I would vote against it. Let's talk about the other issue that both of you are, everybody's facing here tonight, whether you should have the Board of Selectmen be a 2-year term or a 4-year term. I would support a 4-year term. And there's a reason for basically all boards. I think there's only one board that's only 2 years. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but all your boards are 4 years, with the exception of the Board of Selectmen and also the treasurer.
Assessment appeals.
Pardon me?
Assessment appeals.
You're right. I was trying to think of what
I
you.
think in the wetland alternate,
Yeah.
there might be a few other.
But basically, the majority of boards, Board of Ed, Board of Finance, Planning and Zoning, that's 4 years. There's no reason why the Board of Selectmen should, Board of Selectmen should be a 4-year board. When you look at reason why I'm sort of in favor of a 4-year board is because, again, going back to my earlier statement, finding qualified candidates. I have to say that if you take a look at trying to find qualified candidates, you're looking for somebody who's got managerial, administrative, understands the operations of the town. And then, it's a 2-year term, a person that's considering it, a good person, if he has a job, he's certainly not going to give up his job for 2 years. It's a crapshoot. You shouldn't. Usually the individuals that we find are basically somebody's approaching retirement, or perhaps in a down period when there's a layoff, you find a person really qualified. Okay. That's the only time you really find a first selected candidate. And then when you take a look at the last couple of elections, the last election, there was only one candidate that was on the Republican side. Dan won that one. Prior to that, the Democratic, we had no Republican candidate. It was a one so-called person for first selectman. Finding candidates, it's very, very difficult. And then when you think about this expertise that you need, you have to really find somebody, because today operating the type of government that we had 20 years ago versus today, it's totally different. Okay. When I take a look at the history of the town, I've been here for 48 years, and in that period of time, we've had 2 administrations, and that might be off on this one, that were only 1 term, 2-year term. The first one was Ed Mills. The Bethel Republican Town Committee decided not to advance Ed for a 2nd term. That was a political decision. The last one was a Democratic one, which was Alice Hutchinson. She got voted out. But you think about that. Technically, it's only 1 person that was only a 2-year term for first selectman. 1 out of 2 years out of 48, that's a small percentage. And then again, go back to my earlier statement, all of your key commissions, okay, and boards, most of them are 4 years. There's no reason for not having a 4-year term. So, when you take a look at the thing, I think you're very safe in going towards a 4-year term. There's no doubt in my mind, because history dictates that here in Bethel. We've had most of our first selectmen and selectmen have been on 4-year terms, if not more. Okay. Okay. I don't know. Is there any questions on this at this point? Anybody?
Yeah, at the end, I'd like to address one number.
Fine. I've only got 2 other issues, and one might be sort of controversial, but we'll look into it. As I said, we're here for transparency on terms of government. And this is where I sit today as town treasurer. I honestly think the town treasurer is underutilized. And you're going to ask me why. Well, first of all, you have an insurance and pension commission. What is the insurance commission, the pension insurance commission about? It's about investments. The treasurer is not even part of that. And it should be, because you are looking at the progress of your investments. You sometimes have to change some of these investments. And right now, treasurer is not, it's not his responsibility. I go to meetings strictly for information to see how well these pensions are doing, how well our investments are doing. It's a very enlightening thing, but this is where, it's money. And anytime there's money, I say the treasurer should really be involved. The second issue that I've got about the town treasurer, now this is going to be a little bit controversial. When you take a look, I honestly feel that the treasurer should be a part of the budgetary process. Now, the budgetary process is where the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance, they meet during in January, February, March, talk to department heads, what their budgets are specifically. And as treasurer, I'm sorry, let me just stand that thought. I mean, they get to look at line items. And questions are passed back and forth between, the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance, and the department heads when they're presenting the budget. It's only a summation, these line items. Now, as town treasurer, what I do weekly, I get to see the other side of the equation. The other side of the equation is the expenses. I get to see where the dollars and cents are spent. I'll give you sort of a couple examples. Memberships, professional organizations. Every department head belongs to a membership, I'm sure. So you take a look at what these cost, $200, $400, $500. But when you find individuals or departments belonging to Northern Fairfield County, belonging to the New England Association, belonging to the state, belonging to the federal, you start multiplying this times, whatever the value is and the number of employees, and you get, versus what the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance looks at. They look at a line item, we're going to have $6,000 for these educational conferences. I get to see where it really is, maybe one or two individuals with this number of 5 organizations. How does that affect your taxes, my taxes? They all do. It's sometimes an overkill. Now, I can tell you, I was the director of marketing and business development over in Europe for about nearly 4 years. And I understand what some of these conventions are. We've had a history in the town here where people have attended a convention for educational purposes in the state of Washington, state of Texas. I'm saying to myself, wait a minute, what's wrong with Pennsylvania, New York, or Massachusetts? Those are, anytime you go to these conventions, I can tell you from my experience, 50% is educational, the other 50% is vacation. I'm sorry to say that, but it's true. We've all been there, I'm sure. This is where I have to say the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance, they don't see this. They just see the line. I'm sure if Dan sits down with the department heads occasionally and say, how are things going? You don't get into the details like I do weekly. I can see this. Okay. This is the reason why I'm sort of pushing for that the treasurer should be part of that so-called vetting process of the annual town budget, okay, and the development of it, because I get to the point that I see the nickels, dimes, and dollars, okay, not the thousands, okay. I know what questions to ask. It's something that I'm concerned about, okay, and I don't know that this may be something that this commission may or may not want to consider. So I'm offering this really as a suggestion to the commission here tonight. The next issue, and it's a mute issue. These are commissions in general. It's, and I want to sort of pick on fire and police a little bit. I don't have the details for the fire commission, the police commission. I've read what's on in section C316. You know, the police commission develops the budget for presentation to the board of selectmen and board of finance. The question I've got is, do they have, in terms of quarterly reviews, you know, I've been perhaps in management too long, that, you know, we had quarterly reviews and seeing how well are you doing against a budget, your expenditures. I firmly believe in transparency, and it's nice to develop a budget, but if you're not following it, what's the point? You can develop it, and what's the point? You have to have transparency. So, you know, if take a look at C316, you look at what their responsibility is. That's the police commission, but I'm sure it applies to every other board or commission. This is where, you know, we elect these individuals to put them in this position, but they should challenge the expenditures, because you may develop a budget, but how is it being used? You know, and that's really what I'm here for tonight. If you have any questions, feel free. I think I've got enough experience on both sides, you know, of the equation here. I've been really enjoying being a town treasurer. I tell you, it's opened up my mind. I have to say, I wish I knew what these expenditures were before I was a selectman, because I could have been a little bit more knowledgeable about it. Okay.
Yeah, I will say that, you know, Dan meets with the department heads to review budgets and where spending is matching up or falling short or overspending certain budget lines. And that's what, every 2 months? Every quarter. Every quarter. Pretty much. Yeah. It wasn't always that way, but that's what I know. But it's, and one possibility would be, you know, the department heads present their budgets to the first selectman and the controller, and maybe also the assistant controller.
So you do like,
But you could always be invited to those meetings.
but if you really look at the process today, you know, you got the budget, and then the controller gets the expense. He takes a look and makes sure that there's a line item assigned to it. The accountant basically puts it on the books, and I took a look at essentially, is there an invoice for this expense? The other responsibilities of the town treasurer is essentially to sign off on all banking signatures necessary for banking between the town and the bank, and bonding. Okay, and I take a look at the weekly expenses. As I said, I think the treasurer is underutilized. That's the reason why I brought this up tonight.
And currently, is the controller kind of a staff liaison with Commissioner of Insurance?
Yeah,
Because attending all those meetings, so.
yeah, very much so. I mean, the controller does a lot with Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen, Insurance and Pension Commission, and others, you know, to pass along what's actually happening, where the money is, where the balances are. He's a big fan. To Paul's point, the treasurer, while it may be underutilized, is a very important role because it really is an oversight role. You know, we get audited every year, but the treasurer is the one who makes sure the money is where it's supposed to be. And when we do the bonding, we sign off. I mean, it really is the primary role of the treasurer. And historically, it's not necessarily policy related. It's going to be oversight.
Well, as I said, you know, I think it's underutilized. And I also like to make the treasurer a 4-year term, because the longer you're at it, the more you understand the dynamics of government.
We got a couple questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Paul, you know, first off, I'd like to thank you very much for the service you've given this town. It's an incredible amount of dedication you've given to the community. I thank you as a citizen here
For that.
for that. It's very nice to see. On the topic of 2 or 4 year for the selectmen's term, it's really all about waiting, kind of the way I'm evaluating this as we go through it. One of the arguments that I've heard for the 2 year is that the people get to choose. And if they got a dud, they can get rid of them. Or if they have an issue, that was one of the components, that the people's right to vote and choose.
Mhm.
Now, it all depends on what your personal feeling may or may not be on that. How much weighting do you give to your decision on?
Well, I base it on history. For the most part, all administrations we've had, have we really had any trouble administrations? We may have had one, but it got voted out. Okay. And that was on the Republican side. And it was just a smooth action. Okay. I think, here's the issue. And believe me, I've been involved in this political process a long time. I always said that people in this voting issue, as my wife said, she says, they'll come out and vote for you if they're against you. Okay. But there's really 3 things that I feel people come out and vote for, because unlike a presidential election, a municipal election, it's only a fraction of that usually. And there's only 3 things why people come out and vote. Well, they don't like it, that's one issue. But it's usually are you going to mess with my schools? If you don't, we're going to re-elect you. If my street needs paving, are you going to do it? Well, if it's done, you're okay. And the last issue is always, how much are you going to raise my taxes? If you're going to go over 3%, I'm voting against you. I've always found that over my involvement on the town side, on the politics side, that those are the key issues. The problem is today, I feel, is that Bethel is not the same community that I moved into, 48 years ago. It was a little farming community of 7,500 people. And you had a lot of volunteers because people, they worked in town and all that. Today, most of our people work outside of town with growing families and trying to get them to get involved in government. Some say, I don't have the time. I'd love to, but I don't have the time. And if things are moving along slowly and faithfully to their liking, I don't think the issue of saying, do I need to replace the Board of Selectmen or any other board? It's the point today, and I told this to Joan, I says, it's got nothing to do with tonight's meeting, but think about the Board of Selectmen. It's been around in Bethel for over 150 years, I believe, right? As this town grows, I'm predicting it's not going to be this Charter Revision Commission. It's probably about 3, 4, 5 commissions from now, 15, 16 years from now, or 20 years from now. We may have to consider a different form of government. And that would be perhaps a city manager or a mayoral, because people accept, for the most part, how things are running in town. We just have to look at how our budgets have passed lately.
A couple of quick ones, if we could run through it. I don't want to take too much time here. From what I gather, what you're telling me, that a 2-year term versus a 4, you think on a 4-year term, you find better qualified candidates based upon a number of factors, including, their employment, like who's going to make that risk unless you're retired, or some of those factors that you said, or you're wealthy, what have you. You got to put food in your mouth, and who wants to get a job every 2 years? And that also then flows over to the skill set. What kind of a person are you going to get? Are they business minded? Do they know planning, budgeting, operating, government operations, et cetera? Is that true? Is that what you said? And so the last question that I've talked about in the past, the discussion is, do you believe that a first selectman's decisions may be predicated upon the fact that he or she has about 8 months, if it's a 2-year term, where they're not in election mode? And whereas if it's a 4-year term, he or she may be able to evaluate the issue that's in front of them, without the thought of the pending election and whether or not they're going to have the job. Would you say that's an accurate statement?
Yeah, fairly accurate, because I want to say the first year it's a learning experience.
Huh?
And many projects around town, whether you're building a new school or a water project, it's not a 1 or 2 year term. It's usually it takes you about 4 years to complete a project. So, the more experience you've got, the better for the town.
Okay. And I'll just combine this into one, because you talked about different commissions and how the treasurer can affect it. How can is there specific language that you think we should introduce or that is necessary, whereas the treasurer should be more involved and part of that? You mentioned the insurance and pension, and I'm not even going to pretend to understand how it works. I'm sure that there are lots of financial analysis that is done, prior to, but what he seems to be indicating is that more involvement needs to be done, because you're seeing the nickel and dimes every day,
Yes.
where they're seeing it maybe in a summary form.
Right, summation.
And so I don't know if there's an opportunity in the charter, if it's worth, discussing farther where we can include language to include them. Maybe we can talk about that. Again, I don't know how it works, but he came here tonight, and if he's concerned about it, especially with his experience here in town, it's certainly worth our attention. And then I think I'll pass on the police commission quarterly reviews, things like that. I know at least my government that I work for, we meet regularly on where we are with the budget, with the selectmen and our town finance officer. And I assume there's some checks and balances as we go. And, budget is a budget. Nobody has a crystal ball, especially police, because things come out of nowhere. Nobody expects a detailed investigation that's going to cost $20,000 or a car crash or a fatal or, et cetera, et cetera. You can't predict it with police departments. And also, you mentioned treasurer is a 4-year term. It's a 2-year term, or is it a 4-year term now?
Pardon me?
A treasurer is 4-year or 2-year?
No, not here.
It's a 2-year. And you believe that a 4-year term would be better because you have a better handling on
Right.
the,
See, I got the advantage from being on the other side too.
yeah,
But I see it like on a weekly basis. I see the expenditures, where they are, where they're falling in which category.
Mhm.
Okay. And as I said, the game plan is essentially to say, hey, let's be more transparent. That's all.
yeah. Yeah, well, I would also think that, again, any kind of a longer term, a 4-year term, and again, there's the balance of the weighting, right? You have a better look over to the horizon of where your finances are going to be. A 2-year cycle, to me, I know it goes like lightning.
Right.
And, 4-year, you can do some forecasting.
And there's another thing that I lived, you talk about 2 years versus 4 years. I know Tim will challenge me on this, is the fact that, hey, one less election process, the better. These
Yeah.
elections are expensive.
Mhm.
When you look at the history of the town, as I said, if you take a look at the last 48 years, there's really been only one administration technically that was removed by the people and voted in by the opposite party.
But, you mentioned, about a problem with a previous first selectman. But that was all resolved because.
Yeah, it was resolved.
Through election.
Yeah.
But imagine if we had a 4-year term and then that candidate had another 2 years.
Well, Tim, at that time, I can say I was sitting in the
Yeah.
office, and I'll tell you, the other selectmen and I put a lot of roadblocks in the way.
Yeah.
Hey, guys,
So
point of order. This is public comment. It's turning into a public hearing, and
Yeah.
Right. All right.
Okay, yeah, so public comment, we're supposed to be getting input. And then we can ask you a question for you to enlighten us on some aspect of what you said, but it's not a time to kind of give us our opinions.
Yeah.
Give you our opinions. Anyway, unless there's any other questions? Any? Okay, thank you.
Hey, listen, I want to thank you guys again for
And you're welcome to stay.
for the time you've given me here, but also thank you for your time that you're spending on this most important thing about the charter revision. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, I'll try to walk to my car without falling again.
We'll pick you up, don't you?
Take care.
We'll put you on our way out.
Yeah.
Probably an hour or more.
Pardon me? I didn't hear
Do you need a wing? You need somebody to
I'm up front.
Figure out how to walk out without falling, write it up and send it to us. We need it.
Too much bureaucracy.
So I know I need to.
Just be careful.
Okay, thank you.
Don't forget
Thank you.
your
That's weird.
notes.
You're welcome.
So, Mary, do we have any correspondence?
We do not.
Thank you so much.
So next is consideration approval of the regular meeting minutes from November 13th. Can we have a motion?
Would you accept minutes? November 15th.
Happy.
Okay, any comments?
No, good job.
Okay, all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed or abstained? All right, thank you. So, all right, we need to work on the schedule for 2025, the schedule for meetings. Alice, did you have, you would send a text, does that include information about the meetings?
I sent you an email about my conflict is really only the third Thursday of the month.
Okay, good.
And I'm hoping to avoid Mondays, but I think most people avoid Mondays because there's so many national holidays on a Monday anyway.
Okay, well, it looks like the best date, and Mary advised me that room A is available on the first Wednesday. And no one is showing a conflict for the first Wednesday. So if that's okay.
Except for New Year's Day.
You're saying
Except for New Year's Day.
we can make changes on the run as we go. But
You got it.
yeah, and I'm sure room A is available on January 1st. Anyway.
It's
So
a-
let's take a look. So in that case, the second Wednesday for January, no one has a conflict there. So if we, January 8th. Does that sound good? And then we may have to be in this room then?
It's possible. I didn't check to see on the second Wednesday for January if any meeting rooms were available.
Oh, and maybe before we get too deep in this, Nick, can you kind of review for us our deadline and kind of walking back?
Sure, it's fairly simple. So the drop dead deadline from almost council is September 25th of 2025.
What's the date? I'm sorry.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
September 25th of 2025. That is the date where the commission has to have its draft report finalized for submission to the Board of Selectmen. That doesn't mean the commission's job will end at that point in time, but that's kind of your trigger point. We need to have a draft.
And then before that, we would have a hearing.
We don't have to have another hearing. The Board of Selectmen has to have a public hearing once they receive the draft.
Okay, so that would be optional for us.
Yes, we can hold as many public hearings as you'd like, but our obligation has already been fulfilled with the initial.
Okay, so then if we kind of go to the first Wednesday in February would be the 5th. And then in March, it would be also the 5th. And then April, the first Wednesday would be actually the night of the annual town budget meeting. You said April 2nd? Dan?
Sending another,
Yep, the annual meeting for the budget.
yeah, we're looking at April 2nd right now. That has to be confirmed by the Board of Selectmen. But we'll definitely vote on that before January 15th for the charter.
Right, right. Um, Okay, would people want to avoid that conflict?
Yeah.
You want to avoid that conflict?
Right.
So do you want to then instead, same thing, go to the second Wednesday which would be April 9th?
That works for me.
And that might end up being again, a situation where we can't be in room A.
Does anybody know when school break is?
Yes, it's the week of the 14th. Yeah, we have to go through that to figure out when the kind of meeting would be in a budget referendum. Okay, so then for May, the first Wednesday would be the 7th. May 7th, Wednesday. In June, the first one is June 4th. And then July, do you want to avoid 4th of July week or?
Yes.
um,
That would be the second. We have an issue.
Yeah, but so many people go away that week.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to try going the other direction? Maybe do June 18th? So we just double up in June?
What is 25th not okay?
Pardon?
June 25th isn't okay? You wanted to double up in June, the 4th.
Right, yeah.
The last Wednesday is the 25th.
Yeah, we have town committee on the 25th, but we might be able to just move that around or just not go. What do you think?
Well, what about Tuesday, the 24th?
Tuesday, the 24th would be the fourth Tuesday.
Which is fine.
And I'm showing Penny and just Penny.
Or Thursday, the 26th?
You said the fourth? The
1,
fourth,
2, 3, 4, never mind.
the fourth Tuesday?
For me, it's the third, yeah, the fourth Thursday would be the 26th.
Oh, fourth Thursday. Okay, so the fourth Thursday, okay. Yeah, it looks like we're okay that date. So let's do June 26th.
And then skip July altogether.
Okay, and then, right, so then that will be actually our July meeting. And then we'll go back to
August.
the first Wednesday in August is the 6th. And then September, the first Wednesday would be the 3rd.
Mr. Chairman, I did misspeak on the end date of the draft report, it's September 19th. So I just double checked.
Okay, so if we
So
did,
strike the September 25th date that I.
and make that the 19th.
Correct.
It might be worth noting that August will probably be a good goal to finish.
Yeah.
To give the board a second time to turn around, otherwise we're gonna miss the referendum next year.
You know, I think we're coming along pretty well. So, yeah, so we're coming along pretty well. We're nearly done with the selectmen's recommendations. And I did have some comments on the draft that was circulated by Nick today.
Right.
So, all right, and then beyond, should we do October, November meetings as well? Because if the selectmen refer it back to us after September, then.
Yeah, might as well. Then you just won't vote on it next year in the November election, because I think the idea was to get this on the ballot. If possible, but we can always vote on it whenever outside of the referendum.
Yeah, we could, I think when you vote on it outside of when you vote on it outside the general election, then you have to have
That's the problem on the percentage.
a bigger percentage.
I don't know if it's bigger, but even to get turnout, if that's the part of
Yeah,
it.
you have to turn it. Yeah, percentage. That's well, the other thing is we set out these meetings, but if we finish early, we finish early. And then but I think to get a question on the ballot, it has to go to the Secretary of State in early October.
So at the very least, you want to have an October 1st meeting, which would be the first Wednesday, just in case we need it.
Yeah, so we'll put in October 1st.
I will have to there as well.
Do you want to do the second Wednesday, the 8th?
That works for me.
So Wednesday, October 8th. And we'll go ahead with and November 5th, which is the day after the election.
You sure you want to be doing anything the day after the election, Tim?
I'm the Iron Man.
Certainly prove that.
It'll be fine.
Early voting.
And the following week is Veterans Day. So that'll be a holiday week of sorts.
What was that last date? You said,
November 5th, Wednesday, November 5th. That's the day after the election.
I am getting married that week, so I will.
So,
Really?
But
Hopefully it'll be done.
hopefully it will be.
Yeah.
but then you wouldn't be back by the 12th anyway, right?
No.
You wouldn't be back by the 12th anyway. All right, well, so we'll just kind of stick with this November 5th. Hopefully we won't need it. And just to fill out the dance card, we'll say Wednesday, December 3rd.
And that satisfies the town clerk.
Right, that satisfies the town clerk. These are our regular meetings.
Right,
And then we can also always have special meetings.
right.
Or
You know,
And
cancel.
we may need to do it if we, as we go along, we really should try to get this done as quickly as possible. And if we can get this wrapped up soon enough, it then goes on the November ballot.
Julie, I'm sorry, when is the September date?
September 3rd. So running down, we'll start with January, then I'm just going to say the date, January 8th, then the 5th, then the 5th, the 9th, the 7th, the 4th of June, and then the 26th of June. Followed by August 6th, then the 3rd, the 8th, the 5th, the 3rd. And we'll be capturing in a minute.
Right.
Set there, okay, so, okay, mission accomplished. And then, Mary, the town clerk just has to be notified through the minutes that you turn in, or is there a separate document?
It's a separate document.
Okay, and you'll take care of that?
Yes, do you want to vote on it?
Oh, yes, good idea. Okay, would someone like to make a motion to adopt
I
these dates
move
for a
that
regular
these
calendar?
dates be, on our calendar for next year. That should be town clerk.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Opposed or abstained? Okay,
The question,
yes.
we ready to get into the charter? or do you-
Yeah, so do you want to start with any comments you have about, Nick's draft?
Yes. All right, I just have a question about, C6-3. I can find it. C6-3 has to do with the annual town meeting. The words are annual town meeting rather than budget meeting. And then it seems to be kind of mixed up, some budget, some, I don't want to nitpick, but should we look for consistency there? C63,
Yeah, I think what was happening there is we're taking out the word budget
right,
because the state statutes talk about the annual town meeting.
right, but then, you look through it. 2 is
So
budget,
I can probably clarify that. I mean, so it was always, or historically, in the annual town budget. in the
Right.
charter. If you take a look at state statute does name, the name that go along with the statute is the annual town meeting. And there was a recommendation from the selectmen to change from the annual town budget meeting to annual town meeting.
right,
It, when you read through that section, it then names the budget. It says, it designates the annual town budget meeting as the budget, 2 words. To change, to revise that would take a lot of wordsmithing. So
well, I just,
what I did was I basically had the annual, remove budget from annual town budget meeting. But the annual town meeting will still act as the town budget meeting. And then the rest of the language will stay consistent. If that makes sense.
Do you think it would help clarify a little bit if we call the budget meeting with a small b, small m?
Yeah, and I thought about that because quite honestly, capitalized terms are defined terms, and really there's not a definition for budget meeting there. So that would be a small change.
Yeah.
I think the feeling when we did it was just that we wanted to make sure it was clear that the town could do other business. You didn't have to turn around to a whole other meeting, right, to do any of the other things you do in all the budget meeting. That was the only reason, because you do have to have an annual town meeting, and you do have to talk about the budget at your annual town meeting.
right,
And then when I actually looked into the statutory section and said that all the nomenclature was annual town meeting, I think that that's one other reason to probably change the name. But yeah, I mean, I think, Tim, that you bring up a good point. If you wanted to uncapitalize, so if the said budget meeting is not a defined term, and the annual town meeting would act as the town's just generic budget meeting, that would work.
Yeah, so in that case, there's a reference to the budget meeting in A1, in A3, in A4.
To,
mhm,
Oh, I missed A2. Yeah,
Yeah,
so that, I mean, that may help.
Would it also help to further define it in one of those that, the budget meeting lowercase is not to be, assumed as the town budget meeting or something to that effect? In other words, it just clearly further defines.
I mean, it is the annual town, it's the meeting on the annual budget. And there's only one of those.
Yeah.
Unless it gets voted down, then there's.
so,
Yeah,
And actually, there's not, it does go back to another town meeting. Yeah, anyway, so,
let's do a special.
so Joe, is there anything else?
not in that section, no.
Okay. Do you want, we'll just stick with you if you want to, unless someone else has something in that same section, just go with.
Well, I was looking at, the fire commissioner section,
Yep.
C76.
Right.
I thought that was pretty clear. I appreciated having that written that clearly.
Right, and I did have a question about that too.
Did you?
and I also kind of had some.
Because I think-
on that as well.
I'm not sure, we spent a lot of time on this, and it went full circle. What happened? And I'm not sure whether the notes I had kind of match, but, still trying to get up to 66. We got probably one-
C76.
we got one more page to turn, I think.
Yeah. But then the
C76.
other material that, Nick gave us about the commissioners and what, did you see that?
Yes, I saw that.
So it seems to coincide.
That certainly helped. The,
Yeah. Clarify.
So in that section, C7-6A. Where it talks about the Board of Fire Commission consisting of 5 voting members, each of whom shall not be current firefighters within the town of Bethel. So that does keep it open for a firefighter who lives within the town of Bethel. That's the only thing, is someone going to interpret this saying that
So I think you're saying,
Bethel firefighters, the firefighters within the town of Bethel. So if you're a Norwalk firefighter and you live within the town of Bethel.
You could serve on this commission.
Yeah, but I'm not sure whether that was clear. That's why I wanted to bring it up. And how does everyone?
Tim, didn't we want to just leave it open so that we could allow retired firefighters?
Well, yes, it's retired firefighters, but then
Or
the
five.
question also is, what if there is a firefighter who is a resident of Bethel, but
Works for a different.
works in another town?
I
That'd be a nice perspective to have.
brought up an example of, I forget the gentleman's name, who is the chief down in Bridgeport, who lives in Bethel, as he would be a valuable member of the fire commission. So I think the commission's thinking, at least from my notes and memory, was that you wanted to have the ability of a firefighter who was lived in the town, but worked at a department elsewhere to be on the fire commission. So
Sure.
the wording, you don't believe is clear at that point, we can discuss change.
I mean, looking at it, voting members of each who shall not be current firefighters within the town of Bethel could be interpreted as like a current firefighter living in the town of Bethel from somewhere else. The
Current Bethel firefighter.
Bethel firefighters.
Or
Current Bethel fire.
You can't serve on a board or commission unless you live in the town anyway.
what about shall not be current firefighters serving within the town of Bethel? Because they're not employed, they're volunteers.
Right.
And I think that it makes it clear.
Yeah,
You can't be a current firefighter who is serving.
Yep.
As a firefighter.
yeah, that's clear.
Yeah, because it's a little vague.
So,
Just that one
so,
word.
so Nick, what do you think about that? The, current firefighters serving within the town of Bethel?
I mean, I think that would work.
Yeah.
That is an easy add.
I noticed we highlighted that piece there too, in accordance with chapter 13 of the code of ordinances, that should not be in a charter.
Yeah, so I just put that in brackets for discussion purposes. And if we can, I can move on to that if we.
Got a quick question on the fire issue. Is, I think it was mentioned before, I just can't remember. Are EMS personnel part of the fire department or is that a separate agency? So whereas could a EMS personnel serve on fire commission or are they part of that organization?
I thought EMS was separate,
They're not a firefighter.
they're not
You
firefighters.
know, you bring up a good point. I mean,
But I mean,
technically speaking, they're they're a member of the fire department, but they're not a firefighter. That's.
so we,
They're not even- You have to be a certified firefighter to be a firefighter. You can be EMS on.
you can see where I
Yep.
could see a conflict coming because our, an EMS is EMS, but they're part of the fire department. You know, I could, you know how the pie starts getting sliced. And, I didn't know, you know, I thought I'd bring it up.
So should we be saying active member of the Bethel Fire Departments?
Yes, because you also said serving in the town of Bethel, but you didn't say in what capacity. Because if they're serving on P and Z, there's no reason, you know what I mean?
I missed that last part.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Alice said that
We-
they're
we-
serving on the P and Z board, so it needs to be clarified right
You-
now.
What you said is that firefighters serving in the town of Bethel. You just need to say Bethel firefight, Bethel, you know, members of the Bethel any of the Bethel, fire departments, any of the members of either department,
For members of the Bethel Fire Department.
either one of them. We may have 4 fire departments by the time this gets tested. We just need to leave that open too. Any fire department.
I think the point that Pat brings up is that the whole idea was not to tie the first selectman's hand or the board of selectmen's hands rather with not having being able to hire a person or bring a fireman on. At the same time, there's really an issue with having current firefighters or members of the fire department be on that commission. That's become kind of problematic. So the question is, should that extend to the EMS personnel who are members of the fire department? Because to your point, you could have, they could get their favorite EMS person and put it, get the first selectman or the board selectman, appoint them. That could be a little bit of conflict.
Yeah.
And then let me ask you one question about elsewhere in the charter. It says that, I guess this town employees cannot serve on various commissions, land use boards, board of finance, and any board that supervises. So in the case of the Bethel Fire Commission, even though they're volunteers, if they are serving on the commission, that commission is essentially supervising their position.
Yeah. That argument could definitely be made. I mean,
It's a point.
there could be conflict of issues.
I think the issue is that in the charter, that reference is specifically to employees, not to volunteers.
Probably would be a good idea to make it very clear right here.
The other thing I'd like to mention on this topic is that, we are trying to attract and retain fire and EMS volunteer personnel.
Right.
And the more potential restriction is just a point of conversation here is that, well, if you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't work for the town, you can't do that, blah, 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 blah. But yeah, I want to be involved in public service. It just comes to a point, how far do we restrict it?
Well, they can serve on other boards.
I know, but
That's not-
at what point do you stop? Is it only things to do with supervision? I can't be on the police commission as a police officer.
You can because it's elected.
Huh?
You can because it's elected. It's elected.
And you could be a police officer and be an elected police
You can get
commissioner.
elected.
In most towns, that's never.
Doesn't usually happen,
prohibited.
but
It's prohibited because you can't be your boss.
you
You
can't.
can't be a subordinate of
But state law doesn't prohibit it. That's the kind of the whole point. Employment's a little different.
my point is just, I think I'm not exactly sure I got a good idea from the
Yeah.
discussion we've had, what was trying to be accomplished with this fire commission. But I also have reservation of making it so restrictive it's prohibitive, or people won't want to get involved. Or, being a fireman just isn't going to fire per se. You may have other aspirations within that agency for growth, direction, your future forecast of the agency. People offer so many things besides actually going to a fire when you're a volunteer fireman. So I would just be cautious that we don't pollute it with such restriction that it prohibits it or discourages people.
And at the last meeting, we spent a great deal of time on this.
Yeah.
And I think we just about nailed it, and we're just bringing up some point of
I
clarification.
got you.
Right.
It's a little vague.
I know, I got
We're
you.
not looking to kind of reopen the box.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is probably the beginning of these conversations
Yeah.
regarding the fire department from the people I've talked to in town that have opinions. But nonetheless, I think this is a great direction where we're heading. We're trying to do our best to make this work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the vision is that it's an oversight committee and hopefully will be helpful.
Yeah,
That's
I
the
agree.
vision,
Do the best that you can.
right?
So Nick, going back to it, do you think it's better to say shall not be current Bethel firefighters, or should not be current firefighters serving within the town of Bethel? We came up with those two different.
Those two options.
Or
Oh,
if there's
fire
option C,
department
that's-
Well, the option C is current members
What did you
of
say?
the Bethel Fire Department.
Yeah, fire department members.
Yeah, I think it's membership that is that is the conflict. This is just advisory for them anyway, so hopefully they'll see it as welcoming.
But the part of it too, it's like, that's the whole point. I mean, I know there's drama about this, but the idea is frankly, it's the Board of Selectmen's commission, and it's our advisory commission. To be honest, I would get rid of it if there's going to be anything other than a useful commission. Because having all this firefighters on it is not useful. There's nobody there to do the work. I need a Pat Dauber on that. Or I need a Paul Zakowski on that, who are going to work with the fire department, and they're going to come forward with budgets and information and needs. And now they cultivate this group, this commission, who are actively working with them. And they advise the Board of Selectmen. Because the span of control is too difficult to get in the weeds, like,
There's a lot of interest in they're passionate.
yeah, but they're being, they're, to be honest about it. They're very passionate because they're worried about losing something. They're worried somehow that the fire commission has been set up in this bastardized way to have Stony Hill and Bethel deciding on what they're gonna get. And it's not right. It doesn't function correctly. The information should come up from the department and the chiefs, and they should have this group of people where they make their case and they advocate, and then they come to the Board of Selectmen and they say, yes, these guys need a fire truck. These guys need a 10-year fire plan. We'll put in that, you know what I mean? Right now, they're worried about losing control of that, and I understand it, and it's not personal, but the commission doesn't function well. If all they are a bunch of firemen making decisions because they're all firemen, that's not advisory to me, because now I gotta go do the homework all over again.
What about your position on having some of the members, the portions of them are all elected? Because there's, you know, again, I try to voice opinions that have been reflected to me. It's not necessarily mine. Is that, you know, well, if the Board of Selectmen is always appointing the firemen, well, they probably appointing people that reflect their views. And maybe that's the right answer. I don't know. But should there be a discussion that some of these positions on the commission should be elected? And does that serve a purpose?
I think that's worth a discussion. I mean, the reason I don't think we pushed that way, because right now, because of the nature of the way the volunteer fire departments work, the commission doesn't really have any power or oversight so much. I mean, they recommend a budget, they recommend everything to us. The police commission has meat. They're the sole traffic authority. They're the sole policy maker authority for the departments. Volunteer fire departments still have a lot that they do on their own. And unless we had like a paid chief or something someday, I mean, that is different. And then on top of it, it's just hard to keep people run. But that's the only reason I never pushed for it, because in a way, it'd be very easy to make an elected position.
Is there enabling legislation to allow an elected fire commission?
We can do whatever we want. I mean, as a charter commission, you can do what you want. I just think that it's a weird dynamic, because it doesn't have, it doesn't have a part of the town that's actual staff or piece, like, planning and zoning has planning and zoning staff, and it has an elected position. Same with wetlands, right? Things like that. You can argue with public site and building, you have public works, right? There are certain things that they're overseeing and they actually have authority to do. The fire commission has very little authority right now. It's really an advisory board still. Unless we had, I think, a paid fire chief, maybe getting close to a paid department someday or something, that would change it dramatically. And then at that point, I think you'd have to make it elected. But I'm certainly hoping we're years away from that.
So Dan, I just two questions. If this gets passed, let's say in the form that we're discussing here, then do you end up having to redo the ordinance to match the charter? And then do you just recast, you kind of dissolve the current fire commission and then recast it?
So those were kind of the questions that I was trying to highlight. Currently, we have an ordinance. It has certain membership makeup, which these charter changes would not be in line with the membership makeup in the ordinance, but you still would be pointing to the ordinance for the powers and duties of this commission. So it's a little bit wonky in that I mean, I think you would want to consider changing the ordinance as soon as possible in
Yes.
relation to whatever charter changes we make.
And could we take the language from the ordinance regarding powers and duties and just drop them in the charter?
Well, the powers, so if you look at B in this section, this was a Board of Selectmen recommendation. The commissioners shall have the powers and duties as are now or may hereafter be further imposed upon said commission by the Connecticut General Statutes, any special act, which that language is all consistent throughout the charter, or by ordinance. So there is a current ordinance. It prescribes powers and duties, which are advisory. So you would have that section go to the ordinance, but section A would be inconsistent with that same ordinance. Right? And that's,
And then that would force us to change the ordinance, which we would do anyway.
and then if this is technically a new commission, right? Because the established commission would not be the same makeup. How, and we want overlapping terms. How do you structure that?
So
The ordinance would structure that. For
yeah, so initially,
Yeah.
when you do the first appointments, you'll have a couple 4-year terms and a couple 2-year terms. And then,
Or we'll look at the current people and we'll time it out. Right, because right now we have people serving, so when they're done, like we can do whatever we felt was necessary to not blow off the commission and not get everybody out the door right now.
because I think once a charter says you have overlapping terms, the only way to comply with it, if it's a brand new commission, is to get.
Right now, we basically have overlapping terms. So I don't think we go in and like throw the baby out with the bathwater, that this is a very long-term change. I ran out with this, we have a functioning chair, we have some good people in there, we're not looking at just like. But this needs to change because I think the Board of Selectmen should be in a position now where we're getting pressure to put on the board because we want equal numbers of departments. Like that has to kind of stop. That's what it's become. And it's not functioning that way. And that's what, and I know the fire departments are very nervous about it, but I think over time you'll see that they're actually going to have more advocacy. That's all, people like being on the police commission or fire commission to be a part of it and feeling like they're involved, town members.
I think it's real important, and, we've shared some of the discussion, that we really look to expand, attract, retain the very best, because the alternative to all of these state, federal, and OSHA mandates is, hiring a chief and fire department personnel, millions of dollars in budgets. And I think it's to our advantage to really come up with, things that want to get people on that fire department and participate in a number of ways.
But I think it's the case of point is firefighter, there's a lot of data out there for firefighters to do that and what would work and what wouldn't work. I think we need to have a bigger picture.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to have human resources people on that commission. It'd be nice to have finance people on the commission. Like there are different, when you build a board, there's different skill sets out there that you'd want to bring together. Because to your point, if we go to a pay department, we'll get a $6 million hit like that. So we're probably going to invest some pretty significant money over the next few years to do the volunteer effort to keep us from hitting that point.
Yeah.
That may be health insurance, that may be all kinds of different things we've talked about.
Training, policy, incentives, whatever we need to do.
So, anyway.
Okay, so kind of in summary, unless anyone has any other questions, disregard the yellow highlighted, that was more of a note for me and for discussion purposes with the commission, that will be removed. But really the only change that I'm gaining from the commission would be to change to the current members of the Bethel Fire Department as the prohibition. And then this change, if approved, would come with the understanding that the ordinance does need revision to really make sense with the charter choice.
All right, and the next thing, and it's a little more housekeeping than anything else, 8-1, that's the administrative officers and departments. As I read that section A there, it says there shall be the following administrative officers and departments for the town of Bethel. And in there's a mishmash of department heads and departments. And you might want to just separate those where these are the following departments in the town of Bethel. These are the following administrative officers. And for example, we have finance director, town tax collector, assessor, director of civil preparedness, which we changed. So we want to change that to what, emergency management director.
Yep, that's-
So that's another place to fix it. Director of health, fire marshal, building official, planning and zoning official, town council, and then we have police department, town engineer, back to an individual. Department of Public Works, Department of Public Utilities. And the only question I have is, we created an IT department. And should that be on this list of departments?
System administrator.
Well, I mean, so are there two things? One is the department head, or is the department head administrative officer, and is, and it's the department chair, department listed.
I think what we did is I recall, when I could find here, we changed the title of IT. We didn't create a separate department because I think we still left him in finance.
Yeah, we changed the title, and this was the 2019 recommendation.
Yeah.
We changed the title.
Because we don't do that process anymore. That was antiquated.
But I thought it was taken out from under the control.
It probably should, but I'm trying to think.
I think that's what you did.
The finance director shall directly control the operations, activities of tax collector and the information technology department. So we left it under the comptroller now. I mean, we could put it in its own department. I mean, I would do that.
Yeah, so think about that. We've got certainly time where we're gonna be going back.
Is there a matter of supervision associated with that?
Right now, we have, two positions, like, set aside. Right now, we have one person in it. And what we did was when the director, well, not just the director, but the manager left, right? We have promoted the person who was number 2. And we used, the manager as consultant for a period of time. Now we're kind of getting close. Now we'll fill in for that number 2. But we certainly did a budget to do both. But it was easier to leave the other guys in control for the time.
I mean, my point was, is he subordinate to that other agency you referenced? Did you say that?
The comptroller,
The comptroller.
well, I think historically the comptroller has done it, but
Yeah.
it's really, it doesn't necessarily need to be under the comptroller
Right.
purview because it's really for the whole town.
It sounds like it should be separate. Is that
Yeah.
position, a department head non-union, or is that a union position?
He is a union position. Actually, when, take back, he's a non-union position, so yeah, he should be,
So he should be.
should be department.
department head.
Probably better that you do that long term.
Is that the recommendation, you think, or
That
you
would be
want
my
to on it a little bit? That would be
Yeah.
the recommendation.
Just
All right, so you want to add the,
circling back on CF-1. Do you want me to clean up what's been previously written in terms of, because the first sentence does say there shall be the following administrative officers and departments.
It makes it sound like there's both.
Yeah, and then kind of to Tim's point, in the middle of the list is police department, Department of Public Works.
yeah, so if you just kind of clean that up, so there is a listing of departments and a listing of administrative officers. Then I think it becomes clearer, and not a shoebox full of departments and administrative officers.
Okay, I can clean that up, and then what's the change to the emergency management director?
Yeah, because fire marshal, emergency management are together. Same kind of thing.
Well, if we could, I'd like to get back to the recommendations.
Did anyone else have any questions?
Yes.
On any of the draft? And I will note, I don't know if everybody got a chance to review, but I did provide some research as to certain questions that were
Yep.
proposed by the commission. So
real helpful.
if anybody has any questions on either of those items, draft changes or the research, let me know.
Okay, I think maybe the next area, let's see, I was going back to the recommendations of the Board of Selectmen, and it looks like we made it certainly to the Fire Commission. So then the next thing that comes up as something new, is we had already gone through what the last Charter Revision Commission had done, kind of doing all that work. So it looks like the very next thing is 8-1, officers and departments. Okay, which is what we were just talking about.
Yeah, right.
Good segue.
So economic development director, that was on the list already, right?
Correct. That was a recommendation from the Board of Selectmen.
Right, but is it in 8-1 already, or? do we-
No. No, it's not.
Okay, any objections to adding it? Is that, so that leaves it as it's a department head and it's a full-time position or part-time, full-time position? Any other comments on that? Okay, we can move on. 8-13. I think this is in the recommendations. Data processing is grown to information technology department. As such, the data processing functions are not solely needed by controller, nor should the department come under the controller. So that's what I was saying.
That's right.
That's the recommendation.
I frankly, I didn't even have a piece of paper. That's a lot.
Well, I read it. I think it's there, but it's got some pages on it. So the controller shall direct and control the operations and activities of the tax collector in accordance with this charter. And what's coming out is references to IT or data processing.
Right.
And so.
Yeah.
Because it's really not data processing, right? It used to be like that. Yeah, that's whole.
That's eight, is what
Really,
I that.
That's 813.
Yeah, eight, yeah.
I mean, I think the proper title is probably IT system administrator. That's the way it's looked at in the industry. I don't, what did you call it?
Information.
Information technology. Yeah, IT got really.
yeah, I wouldn't be opposed either way. The only thing, we don't make that many directors because it's not a director level position.
Yeah,
Director level is really determined by the type of role you have or the type of people you supervise.
I hear you. Yeah, now I see your point because that's a term used in the industry, but not in government. Director has a specific
Right.
title.
And what happens too is like if for instance, our IT person left to be a director, which was a
Yeah.
large organization with 4 people to supervise. Ours is more of a manager level position with
Yeah.
1 person to supervise. So we just kind of like want to also keep that in line with what is out there in the market.
Let's see, yeah, so 813E, the finance director shall direct and control the operations and activities of the tax collector. And then, and the information technology part.
Yeah, and add that under C16 is what I put on here. You can put that anywhere, that's up to you.
Okay, so it's going to be a separate department, but they're still going to be supervised by the controller. I guess
Actually, no,
that's,
they'll come under the first selectman. It's not under the controller.
well, right now, in the markup version of the charter, under, let's see, which is the 8.1E, is that we're looking at?
813.
813E, it says, the finance director shall direct and control the operations and activities of the tax collector and the information technology department.
Yeah, so the second change that you mentioned, was solely to change from the old data, well, still
Right.
used, but data processing department to information technology department. That was the 2019 charter commission change. That was never passed.
So then, given that, are you looking for the controller?
If you look down at number 9 on our list there, section C8-16, we recommend establishing an IT department, establishing information technology and powers and duties. On the, what do you call this? Your tracker document,
Oh, okay.
the tracker document. We recommended that you establish an information technology department. And that would, we recommended under C-16, which doesn't exist right now. So that would take it out of the finance director.
Okay, so then going back to, what was that, 813E? Is that the number we're looking at? 813E.
Correct.
So then you want to modify that to remove
it.
information technology from the supervision by the finance director.
Right. And that's what the board of, the 2019 charter recommends just changing the name.
Right.
The letter that the board of selectmen wrote said that you would change that to read, the comptroller shall directly control the operations and activities of the tax collector in accordance with this charter. It removed information technology, right?
Okay,
That was what the board of selectmen recommended.
and we don't need all, we just need an accordance. We're removing the word all as well.
Yeah.
All right, so then flipping back to your listing. Board of Selectmen, Department of Economic Development added. So this would be new. So we need to figure out, oh, I see it's 8-15. So let's see, is there anything there now, or is that something we need to?
Yeah, there's nothing for 15 or 16. And they would have to come up with language that were appropriate, but it would kind of be, it'd be similar to what they did for the Department of Public Utilities. You know, and basically says, hey, you have to have the department, and the thing is, you establish what they do in an ordinance if you need to.
So, yes, you're going to identify powers and duties.
Yeah, I would propose similar language, and I could work with the commission's review and with the future meetings, but just like the creation of the Department of Public Utility, and if we're agreeing that EDC, economic development, should be directed, technology should be created, you keep kind of broad-based in the charter as to the establishment of such, and then powers and duties can be more fleshed out in the ordinance or.
And in this section, you make some reference as well to the Economic Development Commission. Having some,
Yeah, we probably should in the ordinance because it does that now.
yeah,
In the past, just for reference, the Economic Development Commission and the town split the salary of that individual. But then over time, the town took it. I mean, it was like the commission basically went into debt to the town for that, but the town took it over. I think it was the last budget we took over.
okay, and I see 816 is is your recommendation for adding information technology.
Yes. So with me mentioning what I mentioned to you earlier, just as we're talking about this. Yeah. Yeah. Along with this change, and I'll just put this down here, but we've noticed in the chart with respect to like 8-6 Director of Health, that, we do want to make sure that if the town ever did want to pursue a health district, we just want to make sure the charter doesn't hold us back from that. Right now, there are a number of health districts, I think, let's say there's 20, most of our health districts across the state. And what that does, it offers us, we don't have to pay as much money for our own folks. It allows us to share with, and also recruit a higher level director.
So for inspecting restaurants and so forth.
Yeah.
You could
So basically, we could
share
have,
with Danbury.
yeah, well, it'd be honest, in our case, we picked somebody closer to us. Right now, for instance, Newtown has one, and they were with Roxbury and, Bridgewater. That would be an even size, like Bethel coming in, because at the end of the day, we'll make sure residents have the service too. What would allow us to do, would allow us to basically kind of regionalize it that way, but share a health director, which is just a lot of money. And that way we can actually recruit a health director down the line. But we just want to make sure that charter allows us to do that down the line, and Nick's going to look into that just to see if it's something that should change. But I did want to throw that out there, that it comes up, it's not the first you heard of it. If that ever happened, it would be something the board would have to do.
I think that would be a great idea to look into that, because I know a lot of towns have been successful with it. My only reservation is that the people who do get served, it doesn't become a stop block for process of permits, and then everything, try to control it within the town halls, between the framework of the town, and all of a sudden there's a separate entity that, maybe they're slow or they're not supervised by us or things like that. We got another cog in the wheel that would certainly have to be, controlled, and, board members put in that done properly, because I've seen a little bit of both sides of that. I think they can really work well, because there's times when you want that separation, and there's other times where you're gonna work against you. It has to be a well-oiled wheel.
We would, if we ever pursued that, the town would have to go into it with almost a plan, and said we would keep somebody manned here, like to be here to take their permits, to give service to people. But then, the people who are doing the inspections could be all over. And the way it would be run is, if you're run by health district board, which definitely would have a vote. Definitely have a member on that board.
Yeah.
So that's to your point, that's how it would work if we ever got to that point.
Would that be involved with, I'm not using the right acronym, CROG, the West
The cog.
COG? Yeah, would they, could they have, when you do these things
Yeah.
collectively, you're also then
Yeah.
available to money for the region to do those things, whereas we wouldn't have had that opportunity.
Yeah.
Could have to be borne solely by Bethel taxpayer money.
Well, and to your point, like, if we went into another health district and there's two towns, it could actually curtail the money we got. If there's a health district that existed and there were 3 towns, we could get money. Like, there are a lot of rules associated with that we would really have to be on top of before we ever made those decisions.
So that'd be great if Nick can into that a little bit, but I think at least if we leave the provision in the charter where that, can be
Yeah.
put in at a later time, that would be beneficial.
Yeah.
What section is that you're talking? Is that?
Well, I mean, Nick will have to
6?
look to see, but I think it's 8-6, but and there's another place too. We just need to make sure that we're able to appoint, if we wanted to appoint a health director who was in a district, we're able to do it. And that's a clear path and didn't tell us that was permissive down the line. We would still have to have a health district. We still have to have a health director. Can't go without that. And that's very clear in the state statute.
Okay, so Nick, if you could kind of take a look at that and see where would be the proper place to slot an ability for the creation of a health district, whether it's 8-6 or someplace else. This is,
Yeah, and I
8-6 is more the administrative officers rather than the departments, but.
I don't know if it's the slotting of anything actually with the charter, rather than looking that there's no prohibition against it, because it would likely come at an interim point where it's not coming by a charter change. This is.
Yeah, it's just, we don't want to make the charters prohibit our action to be able to do it by some weird thing, and then we're hamstrung if we don't want the opportunity. That's all. Because there's one more place I saw, like, for instance, on the EMS commission, the health director should be on there. Well, maybe it's health director or designee, right? Because if we had a health director of a larger we don't want them on our EMS commission all the time. Or like that, just, those are things we just want to look at to see if there's any unintended consequences.
I think it's all in line with the growth of the town.
Okay, so then the next thing you had on the list, I believe is the 9-1, general board procedures in regard to Robert's rules. Let's see.
So it was interesting because in the charter, it's very clear that the only place that's required that we drop rules is a town meeting. However, we all use Robert's rules. And, any other legislative body usually spells out what we use. So I think it would be appropriate just to remind it or put it in here somewhere that Robert's rules is our standard. And you might say versus others like Mason's manual or whatever's out there, but at least it does say that Robert's rules are the orders that we use to keep it.
And I think what we gotta do is if we put this in, the voters approve it, then I think the town needs to kind of do a series of trainings for everyone on boards. It was very helpful for you to hand me this book, and I think it would be helpful to actually have a training.
We
have
used to do that. We used to do that.
Yeah, we do that, but it's usually put on by like somebody at FOI or something like that. And we've had people, we've had people come in to actually give them training here and there. But to your point, having it available is important to everyone.
Okay, any objections? Any objections to Robert's rules?
Maybe that could be,
Big book.
maybe that could be Alice's,
Wait a minute. You've got more rules than I have.
I've got the newly revised, it has some annotations.
Some pictures.
The whole book can be quite unwieldy sometimes, and depending on the business you're conducting, you usually don't need the whole one.
No, it's very.
Yeah.
So then among the technical changes, and I guess this is a long list of areas where you wanted to change his to his or her. And my suggestion to the commission members and to Dan and Nick is to consider using they and their. It reads better instead of his, her, it's hers. So think about using those pronouns, and it actually reads pretty well. As I said, you just have that.
Right, it's very, using his or her is cumbersome. And I think in reading it, and I also think we're at a point now, where certainly within the United States, it's understood that they and their are like,
It could be a thing.
and the general could be a singular.
After 35 years of English teaching, I have trouble with it because I taught agreement of pronouns and all. So anyway, times are changing.
Please, my mother would be stroking out if she
Yeah,
saw
right.
this.
I can understand.
How
My
we
husband-
identify specific people are kind of confusing today.
And my husband also still enters a period and two spaces. I'm trying to see. You better be more.
I still do it.
I think he does.
I think it's easier to read.
I still do it as well.
Does it say somewhere in here that we also have to change where it says his means any separate,
Any form of.
yeah, it's somewhere in, I thought maybe I'm wrong.
It's usually in it's old antiquated contract language, so it might be in the
So
church.
we might have to remove that to the sign, or just find that in.
I'll do a search.
Yeah, so when you do, actually, when you do the change, the thing there, you do have to start looking at the verbs and make sure they're right. You can't just change the word.
They
It's
have
a plural, the others are singular. You know, they just go through like everything. Nobody looks at agreement.
No, I'm just saying that's what we could do. We could change they, also take a look at the verb and make sure the verb
Right.
Makes sense.
So instead of he or she has,
You're not gonna say they
instead
have.
of starting to say they has, you know,
Well, usually you use the title, like, the first selection part. I don't know that they use his or her anywhere in it. It's, the first selectman they assign. Oh, no, just say delegate his duties.
Yeah, so in that case, you could say, first selectman designates their
Their
duties,
duties, yeah.
and it reads well. No,
The only dissenting vote.
how about heads?
That's all right. It'll be the minority.
I'm thinking about that.
another is reaching down saying, you got it.
Betcha.
Um, I don't think we have anything else. I
I think
think
you've reached the end.
we've reached the end of the new things. And, so at the next meeting, we can, take a look at other proposals that come in. So we went through, we initially reviewed everything that the previous commission had proposed.
Right.
And we made only a few changes to it. We then looked at everything that the board of selectmen has reviewed, finished that tonight. And then we started looking at any other proposals that came in. Nick did give us some information on conservation commissions. And I think we're gonna probably,
We can chew on that, but ultimately my conclusion was that's likely by ordinance. So I don't think it would come under the purview of.
and often what we do is the board of selectmen will create a committee or a commission and then have it run for a few years. If it seems to be working, then, if you try to maybe then it's kind of brought in.
And we're doing that with a couple right now as we speak.
Right.
If I may, if it's appropriate time, we're kind of concluded like what you just said, right? So I have just one topic that I'd like the commission to consider that I would like to probably bring up the next meeting or the following. And that is the, C7-8, the Ethics Commission. Just in brief, and again, I just want you guys to think about it. I'm probably gonna talk about it next time. A says 5 members, serves 3 years. B basically says who can't serve, based upon, previous public office within the time frame, et cetera, et cetera. So, there's no conflict for the people who are, in judgment of people that may have an issue associated with that. The C basically says that there is another document that coincides with this, which is the ethics code of the town of Bethel. And D basically says that this ethics commission make recommendation on this ethics code to the Board of Selectmen for any consideration of the changes. So therefore, the Board of Selectmen is the controlling persons of this code of ethics. I think that maybe we want to think, and I ask you to think about it. Do we want to include, one, I would ask you to review the code of ethics that the town has on file. And two, I would ask that since the selectmen are really the governing board over it, and also they may be subject to, ethics, code of ethics, violations of things of that nature. Well, should we have some processes or, substantive things spelled out in this document, our charter, that kind of guides it, and it's obviously, the determining factor, I'm tired, the father document of it all. I would ask you to look at that and see if, because it's so encumbering, right? It covers elected officials, employees, managers, appointed members of boards, committee members. I don't know if it extends to consultants and legal and professional representatives hired by the town. Maybe it should. I don't know if that's overextending, but I think there should be something a little bit more inclusive in the charter than just, well, refer to the Code of Ethics, which is really controlled and managed by the Board of Selectmen. So that's all I
I
ask.
think that's, I thought the Ethics Commission creates the code. I mean, it's adopted,
Well,
but don't they draft it and then present it?
it said that there shall be that document called the Administered Electric Code of the town, established under yada, yada, yada. Said commission shall periodically review the ethics code of the town and shall recommend any appropriate revisions. So they're not the governing body of the
The
document.
important thing is chapter 8 that they talk about. Chapter 8 is talking about the code. The code, the board of selectmen doesn't set the code, it's the town. The board of selectmen puts forth what it takes an ethics commission reports to the board of selectmen, because what we should be doing with it. At the end of the day, any change in the town code is the town meeting, which is the main legislative body. So that the board of selectmen doesn't have any, there's nothing there that could be, nefarious by the board of selectmen.
So maybe that, so there's another layer.
There's another layer. The
There's
reason-
another layer.
Remember that the charter is like the Constitution, right?
Right.
It establishes kind of the guideline, the direction. You rarely put a lot of rules in there. You basically have it set up where, in our case, the town meeting is our form of government that decides that. But I mean, is there whatever you guys.
Yeah, I wasn't sure of that reference. I was just reading what it says here.
Well, reading it here, to your point, looks ominous. The board of selectmen gets to decide, but
Right.
it's really the town.
Well, maybe we can,
Yeah.
think about that. I'll bring the code. I think it's a topic worth talking about potentially. We did have a gentleman come in early in our first meeting who reflected that process of making complaint did not work for him. I don't know the merits of anything that he was talking about, but, it was mentioned, and I think that,
Oh,
we should probably look at it, especially in light of a lot of things going on in town and, the high standards that people, that are employees and everybody else, has to follow today.
looking for a member, by the way.
Damn.
Hi,
I think it's an important part of government.
So, yeah, so we'll then proceed from this to looking at other proposals that came forward. And then each of the commission members may have particular things they want to add. I know I've got a short list right now. And then we can go from there.
And what I'll do is I'll add, Paul's comments to the tracking document and maybe Pat's comment as well. So that's.
Okay, there's no other business before us. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thanks, Alice.
Definitely from Alice on that.
Welcome, Tim. Thank you for including me.
You're super, Alice.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you. You too.
We know we had the camera on you the whole time.